Hi, welcome to Star Power Alchemy YouTube. My name is Alejandra Sofia, bringing to you the astrological news from the macrocosm to the microcosm of you to help you navigate your reality and the times we are living in. I'm tuning in to CHiRON and ARiES moving retrograde from July 8th until December 13th, 2019, and I'm tuning in from today, July 8th. So I'm really feeling the potency of this time. So I'm going to cover it by describing first who CHiRON is, and then going into the key aspects of which I've cast a chart for the time. CHiRON is going retrograde at 4:40 p.m. Pacific time, and I cast a chart for that time in the location that I am in. And then looking at the key aspects of this chart and this year that we're in to really unpack and get inside of the potency of this CHiRON retrograde path time frame from July 8th until December 13th. So first, who is CHiRON? CHiRON is our multidimensional self, energy body. That is who CHiRON is. CHiRON was discovered in 1977. That is when CHiRON became visible to human beings through its discovery, and the person who discovered it, who I forget, and at this moment. And the important piece being that it was discovered in 1977, and that made it become visible to that aspect of ourselves, of humanity. Of our mythic journey became visible and even more accessible to ourselves because of the discovery of CHiRON in our solar system. So in terms of the way astrologers think of the planets and their discovery, you know, the seven sacred planets, the seven planets that are visible from the naked eye, they've been visible to us through the beginning of, you know, pre-human history, because they've been visible. We've been honoring them, seeing them. They've been watching over us and presiding over us in terms of our growth as human beings and our emergence onto the planet. So that's a really old story, and humanity has been in relationship with the seven visible planets: the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, for a long time. And so as the other planets began to emerge through technology, through the ability, you know, humanity gaining the ability to see into the invisible and bring the invisible into the visible, then there was the discovery of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and then CHiRON. So Pluto, before CHiRON, is the most recent planet that was discovered and made visible back in 1930. So that's actually that's not too long ago. And so there is something about Pluto and what's been happening since the discovery of Pluto that has made something accessible to human beings in terms of consciousness and evolution and growth. And so with CHiRON coming in 1977, the latest one in CHiRON being a quixotic planet, it's considered it acts like a comet and a planet. So the name CHiRON too speaks to it's a magical curiosity, I'll say, because it's in the image of a centaur, and a centaur being half human and half horse. So there's a very significantly mystical aspect to CHiRON. And so to describe who CHiRON is and give you some other names for it, my lineage, star Genesis, that was the lineage of astrology that I study is star Genesis, and this astrology emerged through Elias Lonsdale in the late 70s, and then he delivered it and shared it with others in the late 80s, and it's been turned into, that body of knowledge has been turned into essentially a school taught and founded and led by Mark Borax, a soul level astrologer who deeply incorporates star genesis into his teachings and his readings, and that's the College of Visionaries and Wizards. So I say all that because just to deliver this one piece of information, that star genesis has renamed CHiRON Alpha Omega, so the beginning and the end. And the beginning and the end when you hook the beginning and the end together, it creates a circle, and that's just a two-dimensional representation of a multi-dimensional experience of wholeness. And that's where I've named, and I use the name instead of CHiRON, I'll use holos, the Greek word HOLOS, which means complete, whole, and intact. And the image for holos is how I feel who CHiRON is. And who CHiRON is our energy body, and it's our multi-dimensional energy body that sacred texts like yoga speak to the energy body, the nadis, the meridians, the levels of causation of spirit and how spirit connects into the body. And so yoga's the study of yoga. And the yogic texts have definitely been, those ancient wisdom texts speak of who CHiRON is in the language itself, to reconnect the mind body, the gap between the mind and body that was created through this last 1,000 years of evolution in humanity, through the ideas and the ideas and the dominance and the dogma that has been crowding and overpowering our true power. And our true power lies in our identity and our ability to identify with our true power and our true source of identity. And so that's where CHiRON comes into the picture. CHiRON comes into this mythic journey to be the bridge, the rainbow bridge between higher consciousness and earthly life. So CHiRON, another symbol for it, is the rainbow bridge, and which speaks to the rainbow bridge of our energy centers, our chakras, and each energy center from the root to the crown having a particular color that it's very much connected to, and that being the rainbow bridge. CHiRON, holos, alpha, omega, this planetoid / planet / comet resides between Uranus and Saturn in the solar system. And so there's the bridge. That's where CHiRON, appearing to the visible eye of humanity and awareness of humanity, began to really create a new, anyone born in 1977 and beyond, there's a bridge, there's very much a bridge being created between, in terms of consciousness and identity of who we really are. And so anyone who's born in 1977 or beyond, especially after the discovery of CHiRON, which was in November 1977, that I believe new beings were being born into the planet since then. So CHiRON streamlines energy, and it's streamlining consciousness source through the awareness, the human vessel of me and identity of I and I am, to come into I am frequency, ground it, stream it through the lower energy centers through the heart frequency. And so that's who CHiRON is, the heart frequency. That is the connecting emperor chakra that bridges the higher upper chakras with the lower chakras that root us into the earth, that really root us in our subjective reality into an identity with a much more objective reality. And so it's coming into universal identity through I am. And so say hello to CHiRON. That's who CHiRON is, and you have this energy streaming, you have this planetoid in your chart somewhere, and that is a very key, that degree and the sign that your CHiRON is connected to in your chart really significates that what, you know, how you're coming into consciousness and where where your work is. So who CHiRON is in our lack of wholeness is the place in us that is yearning and longing to come into fulfillment. So CHiRON really speaks to also where major wounds are, and so in the chart that speaks to where there's a major hole, you know, so the opposite of wholeness is a hole, a gap, you know, puncture wounds inside of a whole system. So leaking energy, right? And so that's how energy starts getting leaked and wasted. And so it's for you, it's for each one of us to do the work we need to do, our spiritual work on ourselves, to come into our true identity, and to come into it as more of a synchronicity and a rhythm than it is an alignment of a linear alignment, because I know that word's used a lot and I've used that word a lot. And so if you can think of alignment in terms of synchronizing yourself and harmonizing rhythms and energies inside of you through a singular identity of I am, through your heart. And so CHiRON carries the energy of the heart, and the heart is the qualities of love. This is my acronym for love: light, optimally vibrating everywhere. So in all directions simultaneously from the core center of the heart. That means streaming through all the energy centers. And that's creating the inward experience and the flow state. It's an optimal state of multidimensionality, and that multidimensional sense, strong sense, and anchored sense of self. So in the transiting chart, where CHiRON, the transiting CHiRON really speaks to where we are needing to, it speaks to holes in humanity, in consciousness, in human beings, where we need to show up and clear up and come into a creative aliveness, come into a creative showing up. So, and I think I'm saying showing up more because CHiRON is in Aries right now, and Aries very much has to do with showing up and coming into presence, because Aries is a cardinal sign and a fire sign. And it was earlier this year that CHiRON left the sign of Pisces and was in the sign of Pisces for a couple of years. So CHiRON is in a 50-year cycle with itself. So every 50 years, 49 to 51 years is CHiRON's cycle. So the last time CHiRON was in Aries, the last time it entered Aries was in 1969. It went through a transitional period where it first entered CHiRON in 1968 and then transited back into Pisces. Just the same thing that it did in 2018, where it first entered, kicked open the doors of Aries, and then went back to do some work on itself through the sign of Pisces, and then went forward. And along with going forward was an ally, a friend, we'll say, which was Uranus, who also moved forward from a sign of Aries into the sign of Taurus this year, and it was doing the same kind of work last year through the sign of Aries and Taurus. And I mention that because, again, as I spoke earlier, CHiRON is located in its elliptical cycle. It's located between Uranus and Saturn, and so it's there to, it's very much a living symbol of anchoring who you are, Saturn, through resolving your karma, and resolving your karma through all the ways that you are standing against yourself, Saturn. And that, so another way of saying it is your negative self-talk and not being friends with yourself. And so as you come into yourself, you're bringing in Uranus, which is the fifth dimension. So we can look at, through another way of looking at it is Saturn being third dimension reality, physical reality, Uranus being fifth dimensional love, ultimate love, ultimate universal vibration, fifth dimension, streaming through CHiRON, the rainbow bridge, the chakra system, and multi-dimensional synchronous awareness of how energy works. So really coming into all your perceptual faculties and superpowers too. So CHiRON is a key and interestingly and we'll say it by magical coincidence, the symbol for Chiron is a key. It literally is a key. And so Chiron is the key, holds very much the key to unlocking our identity, and through clearing up our chakras and our energy and energy body, and bringing the I am frequency through each chakra is essentially what's happening. And essentializing yourself, grounding yourself through Saturn, again, anchor of self, coming into Dharma, because that's who what your karma turns into. And on the flip side, when you come into self-confidence and self-love and self-compassion, self-forgiveness, all the things, and forgiving your world, self-acceptance, coming into really present the present, and how much that presence becomes a present to yourself and your reality, because when you really show up in the living moment of the present, it is a gift. The present is a gift, and your life is a gift, and all of who you are, your spirit that wants to come through all your channels, is a gift to the planet and is an offering. So now to go back to Chiron, and so Chiron, the transiting Chiron, and it going retrograde today, and it being retrograde until December 13th. The significance of this is that this is the first time Chiron is going retrograde in the sign of ARiES, only staying inside of ARiES since 1969. So and then again, the last time it did, before 1969, it was in 1919. And then before that was in 1869. And so so one of the things I'm unlocking is the rhythms of Chiron and consciousness. And this is the first time that Chiron has gone retrograde in ARiES. It's arriving, it's getting close to its first Chiron return since it was discovered in 1977. It's getting closer and closer. So this is the first time Chiron's been in ARiES since it was discovered, since it was made visible in 1977. So it's really, really important. And any sign that it has been since that it was discovered in, and then has transited through, it's now almost made it's the last sign before, ARiES is the last sign before it comes into Taurus, which is the sign that Chiron was discovered in. So we are really inside of an accelerated time. This is one of the reasons why you are feeling accelerated. I've heard many there saying that. So you're very likely feeling very accelerated. Things are moving fast, and there is an urgency happening. ARiES does have a sense of urgency. ARiES has a bloodhound aspect to it, where it really comes alive and feels it's alert. ARiES is in its true state, is alert, and it's alert to respond. So it does have a first responder energy to it as well. And I spoke about the first responder Chiron that went retrograde yesterday on July 7th. Please check out my Chiron video and in my descriptions below. So that also sets up something really important about the chart of Chiron going retrograde. And what we're really getting focused into is that we are in a 24-hour period in which two planets have gone retrograde. So that means that they both slowed down and then shifted gears, essentially, and are slowing down and to move to go back over something that needs to go back over. And with Mercury being a sub-ruler of ARiES, and Chiron being in the sign of ARiES, that we are very much absolutely in this time of really feeling into and getting where we're not showing up in our life, where we're not showing up in our lives, and those kinds of things that are pulling at you, paying attention to the nudges, paying attention to what's bothering you, really listening to yourself. That is really key to what Chiron wants to do in these early degrees of Aries. And you will need to go back over the past. It's the thing with Aries too, because it's one place. There's a couple different places where I see the zodiac beginning and the zodiac in terms of the sign journey and the spiral that we're always going through inside of, because in the circle, you see the circle, but truly what the circle is a spiral. It's a two-dimensional portrayal of a spiral. And so that when you see the circle of the zodiac, it's actually spiral because all the planets are spiraling through it in their own rhythm and creating these aspects. And relationships that they're constantly in relationship to each other through the spiraling that's happening. And so we enter into, there's a couple different ways I see entry. I see sort of the beginning and the end of the zodiac. And so one beginning is Aries. It's pretty classic, it's very classic. Springtime, March 21st, and you feel it. We all feel it. It's undeniable. We feel that impulse of life, and we see it all around us, and we feel it as the sun is growing in the sky between the winter equinox and the summer solstice. And so the end of the end would be kind of seen as Pisces then, because Pisces and Aries transition into each other. And you finish Pisces and you move into Aries. Another way that I see entry into, I see the beginning and end is through the winter solstice, because I look at the winter solstice as the beginning of the natural year, because it's the darkest time of the year, at least in the northern hemisphere, and sets off a new cycle of growth. So another way of looking at the winter solstice is through the new moon. It's like akin to the new moon energy, and it's the darkest time of the year, so there's a beginning sense. And so in looking at it that way, the beginning sign would be Chiron, or would be Capricorn, and the ending sign would be Sagittarius. So I'm just mentioning that because this time that we're in with Chiron and Aries, and this first time that we're experiencing as a collective and individually, we're experiencing Chiron returning to the sign of Aries and then going retrograde, and with everything else that's happening with Saturn and Pluto making its first conjunction in Capricorn since 1519. That was the last time Saturn and Pluto made a conjunction, and it's in a 10-degree orb conjunction for the whole year of 2019, and is coming into an exact conjunction on January 12th, 2020. The last time it made an exact conjunction in Saturn and Pluto was on January 4th. 1518. So it's hugely significant that this time that we're in. And so with Mercury having gone retrograde inside of this energy, this strong energy field of two planets going retrograde, it's really emphasizing moving into understanding the past so that you can move forward. So understanding the past through your own subjective story, your own family story, your own personal story, and also linking it into the collective story is really, really helpful, because also we're in a time of creating global village. We're in a time of creating global tribe. That is who we are. That is part of the mission of the times that we are living in, because of the ascensional quality of Chiron and Aries and what's happening in this year and moving forward into 2020. We are what's ascending? Well, human beings' awareness of who we are is ascending, and so it's going to take each one of us to ascend in our own reality, to rise up within ourselves, to connect and synchronize with a creative power that is universe given. It is a birthright. It's given to us in our template, and we're unlocking the doors of our abilities and to claim what is the potential of who we are as a human being, and we each have our own work inside of it to create and come into relationship with your cosmic willpower. And cosmic is another word for universe. it's not, doesn't necessarily, and I feel like there is that feeling of like cosmic is woo woo and out there. It's like, no, it's not. It's cosmos. It's cosmos. It's here. It's right here. This is actually this right here. This is cosmos. and yeah, this is cosmos too. And these earrings are cosmos. It's all cosmos. And that's exactly what CHiRON, what this rainbow bridge is offering for human awareness, for human feeling. And human awareness is also very much connected to human feeling, which is this time very much that's emphasized through the sign of Cancer, with this new moon total eclipse that we're inside of right now, inside of Cancer, with CHiRON going retrograde back into the sign of Cancer, and then CHiRON's chart, its retrograde chart, has the sun in Cancer. So we need to heal our emotional bodies. We need to heal division and a divisive identity that creates walls, that creates a sense of you're out there and I'm over here, and there's this huge gap, and it's more safe being me and you're different, and that's weird, I don't like you. And all the ways we can do that, where we are at this time in the world, we're looking, if you look around and look where all the division, and we're a feeling of division and divisiveness, and in the politics of the world and the politics of the United States keeps creating division, and the history of division and the attitudes of division, the emotional attitudes of division, and how unkind emotional attitudes and expressions, divisive emotional expressions that show unkindness and a lack of compassion, a lack of empathy, and egotism and arrogance are increased, and so also a feeling of supremacy, and where there's supremacy, there's also a arrogant attitude of looking down upon something as lower than you and lesser than. So those kinds of superiority and inferiority complexes, those kinds of attitudes that have dominated. I mean, come on, right? I mean, the monarchy, we have a history of those examples of those kinds of domineering, tyrannical attitudes that hold supremacy over others and better than, and all the reasons why, and then got to mention Adolf Hitler, who was just like, I'm gonna name and declare the Aryan race as the rightful race, and this section of humanity is it is lesser than, and I'm going to put you all in one place and I'm going to kill you all. And so 6 million Jews were annihilated and exterminated, and those kinds of attitudes that fortunately didn't completely take over the earth in that sense, but did take over the earth, and have been, I mean, that could even persist for a little bit. The fact that even it got to that point, I really believe, is that 6 million Jews could be exterminated, is crazy. So that's just one example of many, many genocides that have taken place on planet Earth. And in order for genocide to be possible, you have to look at the emotional body of what a person is feeling and thinking, and the level of arrogance, egotism, and a negative use of ego that bludgeons, that creates that level of separation and division. So the sign of Cancer is crucial for healing the division, because that is where the belief systems, the unconscious belief systems, get hooked in and rooted in. So that's where the root system is of getting to the roots of being anti, creating these divisions. Now, we do need structure and we do need boundaries, but that is coming into right relationship with true boundaries, and not and coming into right relationship with the earth. And so in terms of bringing our world, our earth, into a harmonic of unity. It's going to take individuals who are healing themselves through right relationship modalities of relating, authentic relating practices. I say that because we are, with Chiron and Aries and all the cardinal signs are key to that. They're key to coming into right relationship, and in all the different ways in through their elements and what each of those signs symbolizes. So the cardinal signs are Aries, Libra, I pronounce Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn. And so it's fire, earth, air, and water. All the elements, the 4 elements represented through the cardinal energies. And the cardinal modality brings us into presence. It's the immediacy of the moment. It's the immediacy of self. And so having that we are in this year of Saturn and Pluto coming into a conjunction in the sign of Capricorn, and Chiron and Aries now, and this total eclipse in Cancer, and the Mercury retrograding back into Cancer, and then we're going to have the full moon partial eclipse on the 16th of July that is in the sign in cardinal signs of Cancer and Capricorn. And then as we're going through these next several months, Chiron on December 13th lands. When it moves direct, the moon's going to be in Cancer, where Jupiter's going to be in Capricorn. Everything I'm seeing is speaking to coming into right relationship. And coming into right relationship is another way of using your Chiron to your benefit. When you come into right relationship, you come into your holistic self, your multidimensional self. And so we are in a time period of evolution that if you choose right relationship, if you choose to heal the gap between science and spirituality, and that they're actually an interlinking system of embracing totality in the universe and of understanding the world, and you weave and you clear up and look towards yourself as a temple. That's one of the healings that Chiron is offering you, to really experience yourself as a temple, that you are a living temple. And to think that you're not a temple is evidence of the conditioning of this world and this time that we're in. And so it is up to us to decondition the false state, the false beliefs, and to come into true belief, the belief that is accurate thinking of. And that is where these breakthrough areas of neuroscience and epigenetics that are, and healing, and all the people that are out there that are speaking to and speaking up for healing, and even in the word healing is the word holos, because that is what holos is to heal yourself, is to come into your own wholeness, is to fill yourself where you got wounded and started holding back in a state of disempowerment and negative thinking, right? And feeling small and cowering and fearful, and it's that feeling. And then when you open up and come into your state, re-synchronize with the state of abundance, because that is also who holos is. It's an inward feeling of abundance, no matter what, or no matter where, or no matter who. You're feeling, you're in that flow state of abundance, because that is the natural energy of the universe. And that is who holos is. Holos is, that's another word for holos, is abundance. And all the ways abundance weaves through and opens up the energy system, the energy body, the rainbow bridge. So because there is a feeling of abundance, there's a knowing of abundance, but when a knowing and feeling aren't connecting, then they're countering each other. And so that's part of what's essential for this bridge, the love frequency that heals the lower energy centers to come into and fully receive the identity of the truth, the accurate truth of who I am, and to come into universal identity through a subjective reality and self, and to use your feeling, your ego, to your benefit and to everybody else's benefit, because ego in and of itself is not a negative thing. It's when so ego is a a place of experiencing who you are, and that's the blessing. The blessing is experiencing who you are, and loving and caring and coming into beautiful relationship with yourself, with your tribe, with the earth, with your emotions and your thoughts, with the things that you want to do, your creative acts that become career and entrepreneurial pursuits and expressions. All that's essential. Chiron's essential for that. And also Chiron very much is releasing us from time. It releases us from time as money and false structures of reality that have been holding us down in a slavery program. And slavery is when you're not in your own dominion and you're in an enslavement program, when you're inwardly submitting to another voice that's not your true voice, and you're submitting to programs that were installed in you through early childhood and past lives and guilt and shame. And so you can be like, there's a point with guilt and shame where we got to get through it. Like, how do you get through guilt and shame? Well, there is a way. And that's where the powerful soul technologies of acceptance and gratitude and compassion and understanding, they're powerful inward soul technologies to help release you from guilt and shame. Because oftentimes, and I have seen this and I found this in myself, like, they're just steps, they're layers towards the deeper reality. And the deeper reality is love and connection. That's the deepest reality, because that is the truth of this existence, is that we are all connected through time and space and all dimensions. We're all connected, and not only just connected, we are an organism. And it only appears as if we're separate and in division, but we're not. We really are on every level. We are connected to each other, and I'm talking all people who are living and all people who have ever lived and all people who will ever live. That is how profound and expansive spirit is. And so in this time of Cancer and the emotional wounding that has been in our emotional bodies, and the shutdown and the massive overly self-protecting patterns that have the callousness that has been necessary, but we need to break those walls of callousness so that we can come into our feelings, and in a way that it allows us to also dream deeper and receive our dreams and feel and release ourselves from the enslavement programs. And so and to come into our true power. So this time of these next 5 months with Chiron in Aries going retrograde, this is a key time that's calling you to show up where you haven't been showing up. So just keep showing up where you haven't been showing up, and using your masculinity to your in a healthy way, because there's been a negative use of Chiron in Aries. And where it's where if you've been like any patterns of overpowering others, there's that piece of, because Chiron is Aries being ruled by Mars. If you've been in like an overly like, I've got to produce, I've got to, where you're not paying attention to other parts of yourself, and I've got to make something of myself, or these are the things that I have to be in order to be socially accepted by others. And this is the attitude, like the go-getter, like the overly go-getter and the type A personality. And oh my God, that person is constantly doing stuff, and they're so busy, and they're such achievers, and that's so amazing, but they're totally exhausted, adrenal exhausted, and they're actually depressed, So there's that side of Aries and healing the masculine wound and the masculinity wound. And then the other side of Aries is not rising up to who you are, not speaking where you need to speak, afraid to speak, afraid to say, afraid to stand, afraid to show up, fear of death, fear of being alienated if you say something, do something, fear of being too visible, fear of being too visible, and what the repercussions of that. So those kinds of things with Chiron and Aries are crucial to unpack, so that you can come into your living presence and overcome the fear of death, because that's how powerful your dreams are, and your need to essentialize yourself, bring yourself through the things you need to do, because if you don't do those inward nudges, if you don't do them, they bug you, and you go to, they bug you, you're unfulfilling, it's not fulfilling yourself. It's also not fulfilling yourself through the challenges that you're being called inwardly to move towards, and then you'll, I mean, just to be completely blunt here and real, like, you'll die with a sense of, I didn't complete myself. So that's part of the urgency of, you know, why we live in a world in which we are born and we have a life and then we die. So the beauty of death is it reminds us that there is a point in which we will no longer be able to fulfill ourselves. So it's a reminder, it puts the pressure on to activate. So that's my offering. That's what I have to share with you about these next 5 months through CHiRON in ARiES, going retrograde in this year of 2019, and I'll leave it there. So check out all my, if you're still here with me 40 minutes later, thank you so much, and please check out all my videos in my description. Email me at starpoweralchemy@gmail.com for reading, and please subscribe. Sending you much, much love.